The headline almost sounds impossible. Federal agents storm cartel strongholds, and not a single shot is fired. In a world where drug cartels are synonymous with violence, where raids often escalate into firefights, this outcome seems contradictory. Yet it happened, and it wasn't luck. It was the result of meticulous planning, tactical precision, and the deliberate use of overwhelming force that left no room for resistance. This was not chaos contained. It was chaos preempted. The core of these operations rested on timing. Agents knew exactly when to move. The raids were launched in the early morning, the moment when alertness is at its lowest. Instead of facing men with weapons in hand, agents found adversaries who were groggy, disoriented, and completely unprepared. That window of human vulnerability was no accident. It was the calculated result of intelligence work. Every minute was chosen to ensure that when the strike began, hesitation replaced aggression. Their sophisticated defenses, tuned to detect the known, were deaf to the inevitable. Intelligence dictated everything. Surveillance, wiretaps, confidential informants, and cross-agency data painted a complete map of cartel activity. Agents knew who was sleeping where, which doors were locked, and where the weapons were stored. With that knowledge, they could design strikes across multiple locations simultaneously, leaving the cartel no chance to warn or reinforce one another. By the time one safehouse door was breached, another across town was already falling. Surprise was total, and confusion was weaponized. They believed their secrecy was a shield. It was just a flimsy curtain before the storm. The physical force of the raids was overwhelming. DEA agents, supported by tactical units, came in waves. Dozens of armed and armored officers descended on each site, not leaving room for suspects to believe they had a fighting chance. Outnumbered and surrounded in seconds, cartel gunmen who normally carried themselves with bravado suddenly faced an unmistakable reality. Resistance meant immediate defeat. The psychology of numbers crushed any temptation to shoot back. The tactical plan left no room for heroics, only for surrender. Entry itself was an art form. Breaching tools, battering rams and explosives, reduced fortified doors to splinters in seconds. Speed at the threshold was everything. Every second shaved off entry was a second less for a suspect to grab a weapon. Once inside, agents flooded rooms with precision, announcing their presence with force and clarity. The message was unmistakable. This space no longer belonged to the cartel. Their confidence, built on layers of reinforced concrete, vanished with the first splintered door. Strict command and control were the invisible backbone of the raids. These were not chaotic swarms. Every team had a leader, and every move had a purpose. That discipline created order in a situation that could have dissolved into panic. Commands were clear and loud, ensuring suspects knew surrender was the only option.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
The results spoke for themselves. Instead of bullets ricocheting, suspects surrendered quickly, hands in the air. Some were detained while still half asleep. Others froze. The raids ended not with funerals, but with handcuffs. This was law enforcement at its most effective. Maximum results, 0 casualties. What they built with terror was dismantled with silence. The larger message behind these operations resonates deeply. Cartels thrive on fear. Their reputation for violence gives them power. But here, fear flipped sides. It was the cartel that was caught off balance. The cartel that was forced into silence. The cartel that surrendered without firing a shot. The optics alone send a shockwave. When law enforcement seizes the initiative with this level of precision, even the most dangerous organizations can be dismantled without open war. Tactical trainers point out that avoiding gunfire isn't weakness, it's mastery. It takes far more skill to neutralize armed suspects without shooting than to rely on brute force. Federal officials emphasize that minimizing bloodshed not only saves lives, but strengthens prosecutions. Dead suspects can't testify, and shootouts muddy legal cases. Arrests made through calm, disciplined operations ensure cleaner evidence and stronger trials. For the public, The psychological impact is equally powerful. Communities scarred by cartel intimidation witnessed a reversal. The men once untouchable are now marched away in handcuffs, their power evaporating not with explosions, but with silence. For all their bravado, they were defenseless against the inevitable. It's a deliberate strategy built on the fusion of intelligence, timing, numbers, and discipline. Every element, early hour raids, simultaneous strikes, overwhelming force, rapid entry, and controlled command, formed a shield against escalation. Take away one piece, and the operation could have turned tragic. Together, they created a blueprint for high-risk law enforcement that prioritizes effectiveness and humanity. It redefines toughness, not as reckless aggression, but as controlled dominance that achieves more by firing less. The most dangerous men in the room were subdued without a shot. The cartels, who thrive on the myth of invincibility, were proven vulnerable. The DEA's raid was not only about seizing weapons, drugs, and suspects, it was a carefully orchestrated message to every trafficker watching. It was meant to broadcast dominance, to say out loud what cartels fear in silence, that law enforcement can reach them anywhere, at any time, no matter how fortified or untouchable they appear. This was a psychological strike, a public relations weapon, and a deterrent rolled into one. The operation unfolded with precision timing. It was overwhelming force, helicopters overhead, tactical teams flooding in, communications cut, and exits sealed. Within minutes, cartel gunmen who once boasted of invincibility were on the ground, subdued and humiliated. Cameras captured the scene, armored men in cuffs, piles of seized drugs, and stacks of cartel cash. The visual impact wasn't incidental. It was deliberate, designed to travel beyond the immediate battlefield and into the wider war of perception. This was theater, but deadly serious. By showing the capture of enforcers, the DEA created a living billboard of consequences. For cartel recruits who idolize gunmen as legends, those images punctured the myth. What had been cultivated as a life of fearlessness was stripped down into images of defeat, broadcast for maximum effect. Their arrogance was a performance. Our force was the reality. Every element of the raid played into this psychological strategy. A sudden strike at dawn amplified the sense of surprise. Overwhelming force underscored imbalance. Dozens of armed units against a handful of shocked fighters. The confiscated arsenal was laid out in stark rows, a visual reminder that no matter how powerful these networks seem, their resources can vanish in one coordinated move.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
This wasn't just law enforcement action, it was narrative control. By publicizing the raid, the DEA seized control of the story before cartels could twist it. The spectacle became a counter-propaganda tool, aimed squarely at undercutting cartel influence. The allure of their lifestyle was no match for the finality of our results. Within cartel networks, morale depends on the perception of strength and invulnerability. The DEA's raid cracked that illusion. By dragging hidden operations into daylight, it revealed vulnerabilities traffickers desperately try to conceal. If this cell could be dismantled, others could too. The myth of invincibility was broken, and once cracks appear, doubt spreads. Doubt kills loyalty and slows recruitment. Law enforcement officials understood this dynamic perfectly. The arrest became a showcase of capability, a warning wrapped in spectacle, a performance designed to resonate far beyond the walls of the compound. There's another layer here: deterrence through humiliation. Cartels thrive on image, an image of fear, strength, and control. To lose not only operational capacity, but also face in the public eye is devastating. For traffickers who pride themselves on being legends, public images of them subdued, shackled, and stripped of power strike at ego and reputation. When the myth is shattered in front of cameras, it robs the cartel of one of its greatest weapons: allure. We didn't just seize their assets, we seized their dignity. The raid also served as reassurance, not just to the public, but to international partners. It signaled that the war against traffickers wasn't a fading priority, but was active, bold, and escalating. Every ally watching saw tangible evidence of commitment. The seizure of drugs, weapons, and cash added weight to the warning. These weren't symbolic victories. They were material hits to cartel infrastructure. For every pound of narcotics confiscated, that's profit denied. For every weapon seized, that's firepower stripped. The combined effect was not only tactical, but psychological. Cartels were forced to see that their supposed security was penetrable. Public perception played a crucial role. For communities weary of cartel violence, it was reassurance that law enforcement was striking back decisively. For families torn apart by the drug trade, it was a moment of vindication. For potential recruits, it was a grim reminder of the reality that awaited those who entered the trade. Humiliation, exposure, and loss. What could have gone wrong only highlights why the operation mattered. If the raid had failed, it would have emboldened cartels. Instead, success flipped the balance. It showed that law enforcement could not only match but overwhelm cartel muscle. That victory became leverage, not just operational, but psychological. The fear of failure turned into the fuel of deterrence. Cartel leaders now face a new problem. Every successful raid undermines their ability to promise safety to their followers. Every televised arrest chips away at their reputation. And every time traffickers are shown in handcuffs rather than in power, the appeal of the lifestyle diminishes. That is why this arrest was far more than tactical. It was symbolic, strategic, and personal to every trafficker watching. For the DEA, the raid wasn't just about removing one group from the field. It was about planting a seed of fear in many others. It was about showing that surveillance is constant, reach is long, and the end result of defiance is not glory, but ruin. The operation became a living deterrent, a warning carried not only through official statements, but through every image and headline. This arrest was designed as a message that the era of impunity has limits, a message that no matter how fortified the walls, how deep the networks, or how violent the men, law enforcement has the power to cut through. The raid was communication by action, theater backed by force, and deterrence crafted through spectacle. It was a warning, carved into the memory of every trafficker who watched it unfold. Because in this war, perception is power. And by turning one arrest into a public warning, the DEA showed that the battle is not only fought in raids and seizures, but in the minds of those who might otherwise be tempted to believe in the cartel's lies. The myth of invincibility was broken, and with it, the balance of fear began to shift.